Cashing Points is back. Week 15. Joined by my guys, as always, Scott and Jake. Excited to talk through a messy slate. Just a 10-gamer on Sunday. We got 3 games on Saturday. A weekend full of football. Let's get to it. Scott, Jake, how you guys doing, man?
Doing good. Excited to talk some ball. Very excited for the 1 p.m. slate. Only one game with a total over 40, so it should be a good time.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, I can't wait to be in like top 1% with my all 1 p.m. team and then just get murdered.
Yeah, it's kind of like, well, not kind of like, it's even worse than last week. I think we were right, all the games were stacked in the back half of the slate, and it seems like it'll be that week. Same thing this week. Let's get to it. We got a lot to talk about. This is a really, really messy slate, a lot of injuries. Falcons, Panthers, I always try to get the worst game out of the way here. Falcons are getting 33.5 is the total. We got some weather concerns in this game. Not that it really matters. I mean, Bryce Young and the Panthers have stopped, trying the forward pass. Same with the Falcons, but this is such a good spot for Bijan. The only concern I have here is Falcons' offensive line is pretty beat up, and I don't even know if that matters here. Jake, this is an ugly game, man. Not a whole lot to like, but we got Bijan here. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Bijan looks pretty good. He's not a top value, fine for tournaments. I really don't have a strong take on him. I think Chuba Hubbard's also interesting if you're looking to save salary. I mean, Zeke's going to soak up the vast majority of ownership when you look at sub 6K running backs. So, he's an interesting pivot, but man, I mean, it's so gross. It's hard to, have much conviction over anyone in this game.
Yeah, I think Chuba with Panthers D makes sense. Ritter will take sacks, throw picks, do Desmond Ritter things. But I mean, on the Panther side, that's really all I got here. Scott, what do you think about Bijan, Chuba?
Yeah, I think Bijan's a really good tournament play, maybe a great tournament play. Chuba Hubbard, I think, is less interesting, but still in play. He's finished top 15 in XFP in 3 straight games. Carolina's been the most run-heavy offense in football, adjusted, pass rate over expectation over the last 4 weeks. And then with Thomas Brown, he's seen his best volume games, averaging 15 XFP per game. That's basically RB12 numbers. I think he could have got there last week if Miles Sanders wasn't running so hot. He had 9 point something yards per carry, but still this is above average Falcons run defense. Sanders is still going to mix in, probably limiting the ceiling. And, this is a broken offense, so not much upside in general. Bijan just insanely hot. He's finished top 7 in XFP. 3 of his last 4 games had a 79% backfield XFP share. That was easily a season high. He was hovering around 54%, maybe 60% if you want to exclude that one game where he ate edibles and couldn't play. But yeah, just a great value. And honestly, I think he'd be in cash consideration if the top 3 running backs weren't just so obvious.
Yeah.
And then even then, he might be 4.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. On FanDuel, he's up to 8,600. Last week, he was 7,100, and I could not believe he was only 15% owned. I got a lot wrong last week, but did not get Bijan wrong over there on FanDuel. This week, he's going to be 4%. On DK, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's so easy with Kyron being 7,500, just absolutely absurd. Zeke's going to be chalk. You're right. I think Bijan probably comes in underowned. As for the rest of this game, I don't really have much. I mean, we were on Drake London last week. This is a polar opposite spot. Panthers have been really good since week 8 at limiting basically everything, especially perimeter receivers. They've been tough against tight ends. I don't have anything else here.
Nothing
all right, Bears, Browns, 3.5. Browns and Joe Flacco are getting 3.5. 37.5 is the total. This might have popped up here. Yeah, it popped up to 38. We're monitoring DJ Moore in his ankle injury. I think he's going to play. He got back to a limited practice today and on Thursday. Just something to note. He's probably fine. Got back to a full practice today, actually, so he is fine. On the Browns side, Kareem Hunt's questionable. They've gotten wrecked defensively, just a ton of injuries. They're going to miss 2 of their defensive linemen. Their safety is going to miss this game. I don't think we've gotten news on Denzel Ward either, who's missed basically the last month. So Browns defense been really good, obviously, but this is relatively speaking, like maybe the easiest spot they've had for opposing quarterback. Scott, man, you nailed DJ Moore last week. You called everybody an idiot on Friday for saying he's like one of the best plays, if not the best play on the slate. Unfortunately, pretty much everybody listened to you and found out themselves. Pretty different spot here, but like I said, man, Browns are beat up defensively and they play a ton of man. DJ Moore is shredding everything, but especially man coverage. What do you think about Fields and Moore here?
Yeah, so just on DJ Moore, yeah, all in last week, but he did end up chalky when we didn't think he would be. Our ownership projections are showing 5%, which is, way too low. He's going to be, again, one of my favorite plays at that ownership. He's just last 6 fully healthy games with Fields, 46.6 first read target share, easily leads all wide receivers, 115 yards per game, 26.3 fantasy points per game, 22 or more fantasy points in 5 of those 6. So he's just been insanely consistent and obviously massive ceiling. Does seem a bit mispriced, and 5% is so stupid. I will just say I'm not anywhere near as high as I was on him last week. I think there's a good chance we see the bad Justin Fields this week, or at least like the screen merchant low ADOT Fields we saw in week 12. It's just, this is a brutal pass rush. And, that's always been a weakness of Fields, or at least like the play callers are down to just have him check down nonstop and not do anything. Even with Denzel Ward banged up, it's just that pass rush I could see just wrecking this game.
Yeah, they absolutely could. Schwartz is a great DC. He's going to scheme some stuff up too. I mean, they're just a good defense. They gave up basically nothing on the perimeter to Trevor Lawrence, albeit he was gimpy last week, of course. Jake, what do you think, man, of Bears side? They're definitely one of the trickier offenses, I think, to figure out on this slate here.
Yeah, I mean, I think for tournaments, they're really easy to get behind. I really like Fields. I really like DJ Moore. I mean, those man coverage splits also apply, just as dramatically to Justin Fields per our, quarterback matchup tool. He's a top 3 schematic matchup this week. He's also just been on fire, the last 4 or 5 games against teams that aren't the Minnesota Vikings. He's been absolutely killing it. He's only 7,000. I think you could make a pretty strong argument for Fields this week. And I mean, against a man-heavy team like the Browns, he should have those additional rushing lanes that tend to open up because defenders have their backs turned to the quarterback. So, yeah, I mean, I think he's really easy to make a case for. And just overall, I mean, I think if you're looking at the 1 p.m. games especially, this is, a pretty solid game to stack because there are so many strong options on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, this game is really, really easy to stack. Browns are really condensed too, man. I mean, Cooper's still really cheap, I think, relative to his, volume, 6K. He's just getting funneled the ball. I mean, I will say Bears have been really good defensively, basically since Jalen Johnson got back healthy. They've been really, really strong, giving up just 207 yards passing per game over their last 8. That's the 6th fewest, but it's just super condensed. I mean, Joe Flacco's dropped back to pass. It's got 92 times the last 2 weeks. Absolutely wild for this Browns offense. Should be a tight game too. Bears have been really good. They're obviously not a playoff team. They took themselves out of it, but I think they're a really good team right now. What do you think about the Browns side? You were on Flacco last week, and this is a totally different, totally opposite spot. And I think you're right to be on Flacco, but this definitely feels like a different spot though.
Yeah. We were super high on Amari Cooper last week, which felt like a good process play, but obviously results weren't great. 167 air yards, 14 targets, finished as the wide receiver 6 by XFP. I wish like DraftKings had like a game where you could just like swap out one player's fantasy points with their expected fantasy points. I would crush that. Since 2021, Joe Flacco's wide receiver 1 has seen double-digit targets in 7 of 7 starts, averaging 12.7, 18.4 fantasy points per game. Big concern here is Chicago ranks top 5 against wide receiver 1s over the last 5 weeks, easily the best defense in football against outside wide receivers. And that's a concern with David Njoku as well. Like, obviously love him. Volume is just insane. But it's basically like a worst possible matchup for him. But I mean, he's still a strong value, and the volume has been excellent. So I could see him rising above it.
Yeah, nice. In Njoku last 7 weeks, he's like second behind only Hawk in targets per game, just wild. He got uncovered twice last week. I don't think that's going to happen again here, but yeah, he's still too cheap. Any interest in Jerome Ford or
Kareem Hunt played every red zone snap last week, so
I
would say no, especially if Ford is drawing ownership. If he was, projecting for 1 or 2% ownership, I'd say sure, but at like 8, no chance.
Yeah, I would not play him on FanDuel, but on DK you get, obviously PPR. Bears have been, giving up the most receiving yards to opposing backs, but damn, I was kind of hoping. It's been a split, Ford and Hunt have been splitting, but it's too bad they went back to Hunt last week. All right, Jake, this is the game, baby. Bucks Packers 42.5 total. Feels like a freaking 56 total on this slate. Bucks or Packers getting 3.5. This line's been 3.5 all week. Injuries are the name of the game in this one. I mean, Bucks are just completely blown up defensively. Vita Vea, Jamel Dean still hurt. They're going to lose their safety. Ryan Neal, Chris Godwin, who cares though? He has a knee injury. He's been kind of irrelevant the last couple of weeks. Christian Watson's not going to play. AJ Dillon has a thumb injury. I think Dontavian Wicks has an ankle injury. So this game could be a lot more condensed on the Packers side. Once again, Christian Watson's not going to play. Kind of fun game. Could be a really fun game, especially, I'm joking. 42.5 total is nothing, but like relative to this slate, it actually is pretty solid. Jordan Love was really bad though last week, Jake, without Christian Watson. I mean, they don't have anybody to stretch the field. Watson's, not going to play. Luke Musgrave is on IR for 1 more week. They're going to try to get like Tucker Kraft to stretch the seam, and Jaden Reed can do that. But this is such a good spot for Jordan Love. It's just he was really bad last week, and I really, really wish Christian Watson were playing because this would be like the nut spot. But it's too bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to understand why Jordan Love is, projecting to be pretty popular. He's facing a big pass funnel. If you exclude last week, he had been playing pretty well. Vita Vea's back. The Bucs linebackers are healthy. So, Tampa Bay should funnel pretty much everything through the air, especially if Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon both miss. At the same time, it is Jordan Love, and, playing Jordan Love, if he's going to be 8 or 9% is a bit of a tough pill to swallow, but things are pretty condensed, and they'll be especially condensed if Dontavian Wicks ends up sitting here.
Yep.
That could open up, some more value with, I think Malik Heath and Samori Toure are going to kind of split that role. But you could sort of argue for either of those guys as a punt, but either way, it should condense things, and it should make Love really easy to stack between Jaden Reed, Dobbs, and Tucker Kraft. The only issue I would say beyond that is, Jaden Reed sort of playing like a mini Deebo Samuel role. So you could roll out a Love Reed stack, and if Reed runs one in, you're in some trouble. So it's tough. I really don't like Jordan Love as a play, but I am curious what Scott thinks, at least for tournaments.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Not super excited, but I wrote him up. Get the value there, especially with the receivers cheap and targets more highly concentrated. I think Jaden Reed is one of the better values of the slate. To your Deebo point, he ranks second in design target rate. He also, without Watson, is now playing on over 2/3 of the routes. Before that, it was like 55%. That's a notable increase for a guy who ranks top 20 in fantasy points per route run. Also, the ultimate matchup, Tampa Bay is giving up the most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to slot wide receivers. I think Tucker Kraft's legitimately interesting. It was Trey, our social media guy, who actually put me on him. He was the only receiver to play on 100% of the team snaps last week, or the last 2 weeks. 5 targets, 50.5 yards per game. It's a top 5 matchup. He's a legitimately fine punt. And, I know he was technically the backup, but my tight end prospect model really didn't have too much of a gap between Musgrave and Kraft. And even when, after they drafted both tight ends, they said, hey, who knows? Kraft might end up being our star. That happened to me when I was GM 7 years ago. I took cornerbacks back to back, and the guy I took later ended up being, a Pro Bowler. Anyway, I just think he's a fine punt.
Yeah, no, he's definitely in play. His prop market is like 33.5 right now. Pretty strong,
that's great.
34.5. That's really strong for him. I think he's definitely in play. I'm seeing Chig Okonkwo getting ownership, and I think that makes some sense, especially in Levis stacks. But straight up, I think Kraft is a better play.
Yeah, for sure. Agree.
They'll both be pretty popular.
Yeah, I think so too. I was going to mention, I think Jaden Reed's like my favorite value on DK this week. 4,900's just a great price for all the reasons Scott's outlined, but for all the reasons we're outlining, he's probably going to be super chalk. It's just really strong floor. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, the floor is really strong, as you noted, but I think you can argue a bit against the ceiling. I mean, his ADOT last week was 1.
1.
Yeah, 25% of his usage is coming on screens or rushes. I think, in cash formats, smaller field stuff, he makes a lot of sense. But if you're playing, the Millie Maker, he's an easy guy to get away from if he's going to be 20%.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Bucks side is really simple. I mean, it's so simple. We're playing Rashad again this week. DK is still not boosted up his price enough. I mean, he's basically blown out his salary-based expectation in like 10 straight games. I mean, it's absurd. And he gets another good spot here. Packers probably won't roll. They're favorites, but I don't know if I see them blowing out the Bucks, especially without Christian Watson. I mean, there's not much else to be said about Rachaad White. I do want to ask you, Scott, about Mike Evans here. Chris Godwin might not play. This is already like a really good coverage shell matchup, but I'm not seeing any ownership on Evans. What do you think about him?
Yeah, I think that's a sharp call. What about Jari Alexander? How likely do you think he is to play?
He's been dealing with this back thing for like 4 weeks. Packers are notoriously conservative. I really don't know.
Yeah, so Evans is one of the most shadow-sensitive wide receivers in the game for whatever reason. I think with this injury, but also kind of what they've been doing all year, Jari wouldn't shadow, but that would still be a large percentage of routes. And so basically just look at what he's done. Like you take out last week, which was an AJ Terrell shadow. I'm not going to hold that against him. And then you take out the one game he left early with an injury. He's right up there with anyone as a easy mid-range wide receiver 1 on both volume and production. I think you're right. I think he's drawing low ownership. I think he's a pretty strong tournament play. And then Rachaad White, I think, just the most consistent player in fantasy. I think he's in play for cash. I think he's in play for tournaments given this week's matchup. Do like him more than Evans. Green Bay is giving up 25.7 DraftKings fantasy points per game to running backs over their last 5 games. White has finished top 13 among all running backs in 8 straight games now. Finally a ceiling game last week. He finished 4th. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the ceiling is definitely like questionable. I don't know if I see him like having 2 touchdown ceiling, but I mean, still just 7K. He just projects so well again. There's a lot of that. There's been a lot of that on DK. These 7K running backs just every single week have been so strong.
Oh, I should just make a note for new time listeners. We're just going to kind of talk about every single play that's in play.
Yeah.
But if you want like actually the best plays ranked in order, that's why you read my DFS breakdown, where we kind of reach a consensus and rank these guys. Here's who's in play for cash. Here's my favorite play for tournaments. Here's the decent contrarian play. But yeah, we just walk the slate, kind of talk things out.
Yeah, it's really meant this. I would say this show is like 80% for tournaments. You and Johnny do a great job on the Sunday show, talking through cash too. Johnny's been spot on all year as usual. But yeah,
that's where we really pare things down is, Johnny's just like cuts through everything. He's like, nope, not going to do that. Take that guy off your list. Bump this one up. And I'm like, yeah. And so it's a great teamwork, the two of I, and of course us as well. But by Sunday mornings, really always feel really good about the slate as a whole.
Yeah. Anything else from this game, man? I don't think we missed anything.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right. Texans and Titans, man, pour one out for CJ Stroud. This is just brutal. Seriously, this has just been a brutal year for injuries. Anybody that had Texans in best ball, like myself, or Texans in season long, just brutal run out here. Titans On the road would have been another blow up game for Stroud. Instead, we're going to get Davis Mills or Case Keenum.
Nope. Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's a 50-50 chance, apparently, Case Keenum's going to start. What did you read?
Breaking news.
Oh, is it now?
It's no, it hasn't been leaked, but no. Jake, what do you think about Case Keenum at 4,000?
Oh, I mean, he'd be a pretty strong value. He'd certainly be tempting for tournaments. I mean, this is like a great matchup. Like the Tennessee pass defense is pretty terrible. They have been a pass funnel all year. At the same time, missing his top receivers when you're throwing to Noah Brown, Xavier Hutchinson, and Mechie, that's not the same as Nico and Tank, but it'd certainly be interesting. I'd be interested in the Houston quarterback regardless of who starts.
Mm-hmm. Graham, I'll bet you $100 that Case Keenum's starting this week.
I have no interest in that action because you're probably right. I was just listening.
What city do I live in, Graham?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, do I have it on the hat?
What? I mean, it makes sense. They have no allegiance to Davis Mills. He's not their guy. He also stinks. Keenum's like, game manager. Davis Mills is not a game manager. He's probably going to turn the ball over. So it makes sense. In which case, I mean, we excited for Dalton Schultz then? Because I think that would be the guy, right?
So I have no idea. He's 4K, and like I was building lineups earlier in the week just for lulz, and I kept feeling like, damn, I just wish I had an extra 1K. I can make the sickest lineup ever, and this is like an opportunity to do that. Obviously, like he has no receivers.
Yeah.
But maybe Bobby Slowick is really just the new Mike McDaniel play caller goat. Like that's the way my buddies at PFF talk about him from their time together. Guy's just like an insane genius. Noah Brown he has that ceiling. I just think he's not close to fully healthy, and he looks like it on tape. Xavier Hutchinson. I'm singling out the perimeter wide receivers here because Tennessee has ranked bottom 3 to outside wide receivers for 7 straight years. They're pretty good against the slot. Xavier Hutchinson would be the other perimeter wide receiver. Wouldn't be full-time like Noah Brown. He'd be more 67% route share. Would have the backup connection with Case Keenum. I like that. He's site minimum 3K. And like you said, Dalton Schultz, no one's going to play. Probably the most competent receiver we've mentioned. When you factor in Noah Brown's health. So yeah, I think it's interesting. Like you stack them with one guy, it's going to be incredibly cheap. It's just, and like the on paper matchup strong. It's just how much faith do we have in Case Keenum with zero weaponry?
Yeah, Case Keenum with no weapons. He hadn't started since 2021, but he's stone men. It is interesting for sure. It is interesting, and you're right about Noah Brown. And even if he were healthy, I mean, he's now 5K.
So Tennessee side is insanely interesting to me because when I thought this was going to be CJ Stroud and Nico, I was like, dude, this is Will Levis week. And Brett said the exact same thing on a show with John, where like everything is pointing up to like, this is the perfect spot for him to smash. This is the coverage shell matchups that perfectly suit him, perfectly suit DeAndre Hopkins. And this is a Houston offense that's going to push them to lean pass heavy. If you look at fantasy points per dropback, Will Levis is crushing it. It's just the Titans rank basically tied with the Falcons and no one else coming close in dropbacks per game. So you take Nico Collins out, you take CJ Stroud out, and what are you left with? I think you're left with a Derrick Henry game.
Yeah, no. Yep.
So I tweeted it out earlier in the week where if you look at his last 6 games against the Texans, he's gone over 200 rushing yards in 5 of them. And the other one, he had like 150 and a touchdown. He's just like, I know that doesn't really mean anything because it's a completely different defense, but like, that's just crazy. And so we know with Henry that his home road splits are pretty crazy. It's a home game. We know he's the most game script sensitive player in fantasy history. Maybe Titans are favored, and that might jump with the Case Keenum news. And And then the matchup, is this a good matchup or not? If you look at schedule adjusted, it's neutral. But if you look at like everything else, it's really tough. They're giving up just 3.55 yards per carry, 1.0 yards before contact per attempt. That ranks second best. But Will Anderson is out. That's a top 10 run defender this year.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I don't know. He doesn't check every box, but he checks enough of them. And then you stack him with the Titans defense against a backup quarterback. And I think that makes a lot of sense.
I think ownership projections haven't been updated industry wide. Right now I'm seeing like 5%. If that's remotely close to true for Henry, he's the best play on the slate. I mean,
whoa, the best on the slate?
One of the best plays of the slate, if not the best, man. I mean, it's at 6,900, dude. He's gonna get 25 carries in a game where the Titans are gonna win. And you and I have been all over this trend for 3 years now, 4 years. Like, he's a top 3 running back in fantasy when they win. And I think Titans roll. To your point,
but here's what I'll say.
Yeah, go ahead.
He has multiple touchdowns in 3 straight games. That's fucking awesome. But he legitimately looks like shit. He does not look like the same Derrick Henry. He's not breaking off long runs. I do worry about that.
Yeah, that's fair. It's just the volume, the touchdown equity is insane.
It's also D. Hember, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he's lost a step, but I mean, so is Christian McCaffrey, and Derrick Henry's best games this year have looked like prime Derrick Henry games. You know what I mean? Jake, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly like the Levis argument that Scott laid out, but yeah, I think with, if we have a 35-year-old Case Keenum under center,
yeah,
Henry at 5% makes a lot of sense paired with the Titans defense. That's what dreams are made of.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you're right. Slowick is a genius, and the Texans just come out and rip him, in which case, I mean, this game would go off. But yeah, I was coming in here prepared to hype up Levis, prepared to hype up Hopkins, but Texans might really, really stink this week. I mean, their implied total is 16.8. I mean, they're the 4th lowest total on the slate. Only Panthers, Jets, Patriots are worse. Yeah, again, this layout for Henry, is really, really strong. So yeah, man, I really, if we do get Keenum, I do think Dalton Schultz is a really strong play, because I think Keenum's better than Mills. I was prepared to just like completely ignore the Texans because I think Mills is awful, but
Mills is awful, but his game logs for fantasy have actually been decent. He's scored over 25, like a surprising amount of time, more than 0 times, which was kind of what I expected looking back.
Yeah, he's just, it's like he's so bad because he throws it into tight coverage, but it's not like Jameis, it's not like catchable balls. It's a lot of uncatchable balls, but
yeah,
he definitely has a little DGAF in him. All right, I think we spent enough time in this game here. Keep it moving. Giants and the Saints. Saints are getting 6. 39 is the total. Giants are like one of the only teams with a fairly clean injury report, and Darren Waller is going to be back this week to mess all of that up. Saints side, we're monitoring obviously Chris Olave. He didn't practice all week. Dude is a warrior though. He's played through injuries fairly well. But he didn't practice all week. Kendre Miller is going to miss another game. They're going to get Taysom Hill back. He got back to a full practice today. He is off the injury report. And Rashid Shaheed is back to a full practice today as well. He's going to play this week. So we're really just waiting on Olave. Scott, what do you think about this game? I've gone back and forth in my head multiple times in this game. Like, I could see it kind of being fun. And then, it's Derek Carr against Tommy DeVito. It's probably not going to be fun. What do you think?
I'll let Jake go first. I know he's itching to talk up Tommy DeVito.
Yeah,
the Italian Stallion.
Yeah, the Italian Stallion, Tommy DeVito. He's gone over 40 rushing yards in half of his starts this season. We just saw, well, not super recently, but Tyson Bagent put up 20 DK points against the Saints defense in like a half. So yeah, I mean, I think at 5K, like, there's certainly reason to play DeVito, especially when you look at his pass catchers. I mean, they're ridiculously cheap outside of the Keenum stacks that we just talked about. These are the next cheapest stacks. And, I think with DeVito's rushing upside, there is some, legitimate fantasy upside here. At the same time, I mean, Graham, like you mentioned, introing this game, it's easy to see things getting pretty gross. But yeah, I think if you want to punt quarterback and you're not comfortable with Case Keenum, Tommy DeVito's the next best way to do it, or probably the best way overall. You look at a few of those other 5K options. I think DeVito stands out the most, even though it is fairly gross. I mean, his receivers are so cheap. Hyatt and Robinson are both sub 4K. The double stacks are like 11K total. It costs you almost nothing, and there is some legitimate upside. I mean, he's shown that he isn't the worst quarterback in the league. He can play. He's shown some fantasy upside.
He's got a legit floor. I don't know if he's cash viable, but I think he's definitely in play. But we stacked him with Darren Waller. We stacked him with Chalk Wandale at 3,700. I think that'll come down.
Yeah, I'm not even writing up Wandale this week. I'm definitely not playing him at Chalk. He has no ceiling. He's been chalky inexplicably multiple times, never hit. And Waller's back now, which makes no sense. Waller as like a super YOLO GPP play is in play, but I think that honestly that's galaxy brained even for me. On the Saints side, I'm not going to write him up, but Kamara's a little bit interesting. Just, flop last week is chalk. Giants defense is terrible. Derek Carr sucks, is hurt, can't throw downfield, etc. But again, I'm not writing him up. I probably won't land on him, but I get him as a contrarian play. The player I'm most excited about is Rashid Shaheed. And so I don't know that he's fully healthy, but he's definitely healthier than Michael Thomas, who's on IR. He's healthier than Chris Olave, who's a true game time decision. And again, Carr sucks and is hurt and is bad, but Shaheed played basically 5 quarters without Thomas. His route share jumped from like 70% to like 85%. He earned 14 targets, about like 10.2 per 4 quarters. That's like a massive jump. He was at 4.6 before that. Schematic matchup isn't great, which matters for him. He's been very scheme sensitive, but it's an amazing on paper matchup. Giants have been the worst defense against wide receivers over the last 5 weeks. They've been bottom 2 against slot wide receivers all year. So 4,300, we're also showing 0% ownership. So he's going to be one of my favorite plays of the slate.
Love that.
4,300.
Yeah. I don't know if he's healthy. I read something from Nick Underhill 2 weeks ago, Great Saints Beat, who was saying that they thought this injury was way worse than they originally thought. Like I said, though, he's back to full practice today. Saints have been really good with their injury report stuff this year too. So I kind of think he's pretty close. I was going through props before. His projection is like 33.5, 34.5. So that's right in line with where he was used to be. I love that call on Shaheed. Even if Olave plays,
I will say like
a strong call.
He could just be suiting up out of desperation, and so he's not even close to full health. And then Carr again sucks and is hurt. But no one on him. Cheap GPP play. I like him.
Yeah. Saquon Barkley. Should talk about him real quick. I mean, he's going to probably come in underowned, especially relative to Kyron Williams. And by the way, I think Kyron Williams is probably the best play on the slate. I think Derrick Henry's like right there behind him, especially with the spread just continuing to move towards the Titans. Kyron's going to be mega chalk on DK at 75 for all the right reasons. He projects insanely well. His ceiling is amazing, yada, yada, yada. But Barkley is going to come in significantly less honed. I'm not saying that they have even remotely close to the same ceiling. They don't. Rams are just so much better. But Saints can be run on. Last 5 games, they've given up nearly 5 yards per carry. This run defense is not as good as it once was. And Barkley is probably a little bit of a value based on volume. But he's just been, so massively up and down. I will say he's a really, really strong tournament play as well. But that's really all I got here on this Giants side. And you mentioned Wandale is bad chalk, right? Like if he's 25% on, he's like some of the worst chalk of the year. All right.
Yeah, I'm writing up Barkley.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to write up Barkley, but I still just can't get past that sub 17 point implied total.
Dude,
I don't know. What do you think, Jake?
It's gross.
I mean, he's fine. I think for tournaments, it's certainly tempting. He's out there for pretty much every snap. I had a note in study hall that his 90% snap share over the last 3 weeks is his highest snap share over any 3-game stretch this season. So, but I can't imagine the tilt if you load up on Barkley and Tommy DeVito steals 2 rushing touchdowns, right? That's as bad as it gets.
Yeah, it is about as bad as it gets. Over on FanDuel, I think Barkley's going to end up being pretty popular. I think it'll be probably Zeke, Gibson. I think Rashad White will be really popular, and I think Barkley at 7,800 will be a little more popular over on FanDuel. All right, Jets Dolphins. This game looked like it was going to be horrible in terms of weather. It actually is cleaned up a little bit. We're just waiting on a ton of injury news on the Dolphins. Devon Achane did get back to a limited practice today. He's a game time decision. Tyreek Hill did not practice all week. Dolphins offensive line is a mess too, man. This is going to be a rough spot for Tua because Jets front seven is really good. They just lost Connor Williams, their center. He popped his ACL. His backup, Liam Eichenberg, is hurt. He's questionable. They're not going to get Robert Hunt, their guard, back this week. Tron Armstead has been beat up all season. This is a really rough spot for Dolphins. Definitely the roughest spot at the worst time here. They're still getting 39.5 is the total. But Scott, I mean, obviously a lot of the steam has been taken out of this game. In fact, actually the total is down to 37 through 39. I really don't have a whole lot here. I mean, we're really just waiting on Tyreek.
Yeah, I think you can play Breece Hall. Like I think he's in play. Over his last 4 games, 8 targets per game, 14.2 receiving fantasy points per game. That ranks above AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson, Drake London. Of course, cleared 40 rushing yards just once over his last 8. But basically, he's a good boomer bust play. In his top 6 games, about 23 DraftKings fantasy points per game. Bottom 6, 7.6 with a high of 10.5. Garrett Wilson, I think, is another really strong value. Actually, he's looking to be super chalky, but he led all wide receivers last week in XFP and first read target share. If you look at his last 6 games with Zach Wilson, he's hit 12 targets, hit 80 receiving yards in 5 of those games over that span. Leads all wide receivers in XFP per game, 14th in fantasy points per game. And so wide receiver 18 in a top 7 matchup. The Zach Wilson inefficiency is more than baked in. Another interesting stat is like Wilson's going to be, just under pressure the entire game. But Garrett Wilson has like an insane 55% first read target share under pressure. If you want to just like write those guys off because, they're Jets, that's fine. I get it. There's maybe even a case for Zach Wilson as like a YOLO milli maker play, just a cheap stack. And, maybe it was just confidence holding him back this whole time. And now he's going to ball out. I'd say probably not, but who knows?
Did they transplant his brain with Aaron Rodgers? Is that what happened? Because Aaron Rodgers seems like he didn't lack in the confidence department.
Raheem Mostert, I think, is one of my favorite plays of the slate.
Yeah.
He's drawing contrarian levels of ownership. And I just don't think a player with his ceiling should ever draw less than 5% ownership. In his top 40% of games this year, he averages 31.1 DraftKings fantasy points per game, leads all players in touchdowns. Devon Achane is badly banged up, might miss. Mostert had a great game against the Jets when he played a couple of weeks ago. They're a run funnel matchup.
Yeah.
So I like him a lot. I think you can make a case for Achane if he suits up just based on him being insane. You can make a case for Jeff Wilson if Achane doesn't suit up. And then I kind of like Waddle. Or is he just a Ponzi scheme, Jake?
He might be a Ponzi scheme, but I did like your write-up. I thought your write-up was pretty convincing on Waddle, especially with Tyreek Hill pretty beat up. I mean, I think you could make a case for either of those guys, assuming Tyreek Hill plays, of course, just, they have nuclear upside. They're going to be sub 2% owned. The matchup's obviously terrible. The weather could be bad, but, they're fantastic players who could break off, huge touchdowns at any moment. And I'm totally with you on the Dolphins running backs.
Yeah.
Regardless of Achane status, Mostert's a great play. Achane, obviously, great play if he suits up. Yeah, those guys, if they're, if either of them sub 5%, that's a pretty big mistake by the field. Also, on Breece Hall, he has been terrible since week 6 in like every efficiency statistic, like legitimately league worst. So I'm off him. Garrett Wilson's fine, but I prefer other guys in that range.
So I'm with you on Breece, but it's like he's putting up like wide receiver 2 fantasy production through the air, and then he could still just break off a 70-yard run, right?
Yeah.
No, he's definitely fairly priced on DK. I actually think I might prefer him to Garrett Wilson if you're stacking this game, which I don't. Probably not sharp to stack this game, but if you are, I like him more than Garrett Wilson too. Floor's been really good, but yeah, I was gonna note over on FanDuel, Waddle is down to 7K. This is a really good schematic matchup for him. We were on this a couple weeks ago, and they played the Jets. Obviously, Tyreek is got to play to dictate the coverage, but Jets play a ton of cover 4 and cover 6. And against those coverages, Waddle is actually averaging more yards per route run at 3.5 compared to Tyreek at 2.4. Waddle at 8 for 114 last game. So I do like
2
him.
quarters and 1 drive.
Yeah.
Team high 114 yards above Tyreek Hill. And it's like the nuts schematic matchup. So
yeah, he's really interesting. And to your point on Mostert, I think that ownership is going to massively change once we get to the weekend. When everybody updates projections and realizes that Achan's really beat up. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah,
this game's really condensed, honestly. Chiefs Patriots. This Chiefs opened at 9. This thing has gotten hammered down. It actually opened at, I think, 9.5. It's gotten hammered down. It's 7.5 in some spots. Total is stuck at 37 all week. Isaiah Pacheco is going to miss another game. Ramondre Stevenson is going to miss another game. It is Ezekiel Elliott chalk week, baby. Get excited. Week 15. You're trying to stack some Christmas wins for Christmas bucks, and you got to play Ezekiel Elliott this week to win. Over on FanDuel, I'll just note real quick, Rashee Rice was the nuts last week. He's the nuts again. He was 6,300. He's come up in price finally to a reasonable range on DK at 6,100, but he's the absolute nuts on FanDuel again. I expect he's going to be mega chalk, but I will be playing Rashee Rice again. Jake, I'll throw to you first for thoughts on this game, and if you're stacking Mahomes. I mean, the floor is just completely evaporated for him in the recent weeks here.
Yeah, I'm not stacking Mahomes. I had a note in study hall this week that he scored over 22 DraftKings points 3 times this season. Last year he did that 13 times. I mean, it's just been brutal. I do think Rashee Rice is right there as the best wide receiver play of the slate. Yeah. I mean, we've been waiting all year for the 85% route share. It's finally come. He's earning targets at a higher rate than CeeDee Lamb. I mean, this is the guy, like we've dreamed of this moment all season. He's projecting for 15%. I think he will end up a little bit higher than that. You can say, oh, the matchup's tough, but schedule adjusted, New England's been pretty terrible against outside wide receivers the last few weeks. They have stuffed wide receiver 1s for what it's worth, but I think you could argue that Travis Kelce is who they're going to view as the wide receiver 1, which makes Rashee Rice even more tempting to me. His receiving props at like 55. I hammered the over. Really love Rice. He's my main stand in this game. Ezekiel Elliott, obviously, cash game must play. Really strong value. The usage was just incredible. You could always make a case for Travis Kelce as a contrarian play on DraftKings. Obviously, I prefer Rashee Rice. On FanDuel, Kelce, just because of their pricing dynamics, is a very strong value and a borderline cash play over there.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, Rice is just the nuts again. I think it's full fade on this backfield. CEH in totality, got the slightly better workload, but McKinnon got the inside 10 stuff. They split snaps. Just full on avoid there. Just to echo the matchup on Rice, I don't even know if it really matters, to be honest with you, because he's their only good wide receiver. Mahomes is just going to keep, funneling targets his way. It didn't even matter. 2 weeks ago, he had a really bad drop against the Raiders. The next drive, I think he ripped off that touchdown in that game. Last week, he fumbled. The very next drive, they went right back to him. It just, he has Mahomes' trust, and he's the only receiver that Mahomes trusts. So
part of my reasoning on Kadarius in the offseason was All right. Even if he's not a great route runner, he's still going to get those design targets, which is such a staple of Kansas City's offense and such a cheat code. And Rashee Rice has 10 design targets over the last 3 weeks. So he walked into that, and he's also earning targets through his route running, especially in zone, team high targets in 3 straight games. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Kelsey retires at the end of the year, where he's just like, hey, I'm banged up, I've lost a step. I love Rashee. I think he's a great play. I do think you can get cute with a McKinnon just because he's so cheap, just because he did show the upside last year, just because he has that bell cow workload inside the red zone, but nowhere else. But I agree it's thin, but who knows, maybe they were just easing him in last week because he was still banged up.
Yeah.
He's not high on my list though, for sure.
Yeah, he was dealing with a groin injury. 45% snap rate is his highest of the season, though. But still, just 3 targets. I mean, that role is just gone. Where he has the ability to get 6, 7, 8 targets. I know
he's the 3rd best receiver on the team.
It has not been a good year for Mahomes. It's also not been a good year for Andy Reid. We can call a spade here. I just think Rashee Rice is such a strong play, and I think for cash you can just I think, Jake, you mentioned it. Zeke is just pretty much a must play. He's a must play on FanDuel. I will say, especially given the value of touchdowns over there. He's just 6,500. He's going to get every single touch, and Chiefs can be run on. Obviously, there's some downside risk with Patriots having such a low team total, lowest on the slate, 14.3 points, tied with the Jets. But yeah, man, Chiefs giving up 5th most yards per carry, 2nd highest success rate. Patriots are definitely going to try to run it. I don't have much else in this game, man. It's kind of crazy. I get
a few things.
Week 15, and we're not even interested in Patrick Mahomes. And you're interested in Demario Douglas with him back? He's was really good at earning targets. 37 targets in his last 5 games. Should be back.
Yeah. I think he's like the lone bright spot of that passing attack. And I mean, slot wide receivers in a Bill Belichick offense has been a cheat code for I don't know how many years now. The Chiefs are also a slot funnel, so just kind of everything lining up for him. I like Demarcus Robinson certainly has more upside, but Douglas is probably my 2nd favorite sub 4K value. So playing Zeke in cash isn't a question. It's what do you do in tournaments? Because Darren dropped his ownership projections and he's showing 43%.
I think it's going to be higher than that.
I think that
like
might
the
be
Sims,
low.
the Sims love these mega chalk, great projected value guys. I wouldn't be. I mean, he could push for 60% in some of the smaller field stuff.
Yeah, but every sharp is just going to be like, oh, Zeke Elliott is chalk. Yeah, no thanks. It's Zeke Elliott.
Yeah,
right.
I don't know, man. He projects insanely well, and
that's what I'm asking.
I don't think he's dusty. I don't think he's dusty either. Like, I don't think he's not, prime Zeke, but I mean, he's definitely lost a step, but he's not trash. Like, I think people went too far a couple weeks ago. Like, he's been looking good for a couple weeks now. So it's not just like a volume play.
Yeah, he was the highest scoring running back in fantasy last week. He exceeded his XFP, and then he had the best usage of any running back, 91% snap share, 22 carries, 8 targets, 23% target share. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think, it's Bailey Zappi. We don't really trust him as like a dynamic downfield passer. So, pepper Zeke. And, this is basically like the Ramondre Stevenson role last year, which was awesome, even though the offense was like basically just as bad. There's the implied point total is disgusting. It's 14.5, but I think I'm gonna just fade him because I don't know. There's a lot of contrarian plays I really like this week, so that's just me trying to get different. But I don't know. I want to hear what you guys think.
I think it's really easy to get different elsewhere. I mean, I don't think you have to get super cute fading Zeke, but I certainly understand the argument. I mean, if you're unsure, the answer is to just match the field, play 50% Zeke, and live with the results.
Yeah, I'm with Jake on that. I just think he's such a strong play. If you're playing over on FanDuel, like I said, 6,500, he's going to push like 70%. It's going to be like Zach Moss chalk week, which, oh boy, that brings up some good memories.
But I mean, that's the thing. We just saw like
The leverage is played to Mario Douglas, honestly. 3,900.
Hey, yeah, he had 8 targets last week. Would he have had 8 if Douglas was there? Probably not. I think that's a great call.
Yeah, no, Demario Douglas is definitely in play for sure.
If Zeke flops, you wipe out half the field. That's a massive edge.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it makes sense, but man, he does project so well. Him and Kyron are just like, I think, 2 of the best projected volume plays of the season, and they're in 2 good matchups. Like, Chiefs are massive run funnel this year. All right, I think that'll cover the 1 p.m. slate. Let's get to some good games. We've been sitting here talking for 53 minutes. We haven't talked about a single good football game. 49ers Cardinals finally here, 12.5. Niners are getting 12.5. Cardinal, over-under is 48. I'm getting excited talking about one decent offense at least. Niners are in a little bit of trouble defensively, though. They're going to, I think, be without both of their starting defensive tackles. Double check the injury report for that one. Cardinals side, they're going to get Michael Wilson back. Hollywood Brown will play, but he's been banged up all week, limited still with this heel injury. And one minor note, too, is Jeff Swaim has a back injury. He didn't practice for all of this week except for today, so he's banged up, too. A little bit of a boost for Trey McBride. Jake, I'll throw it to you first, man. You've been Brock Purdy kingmaker every single week. It makes sense every single week. I think it makes sense again here. His price has come up, but I mean, it's still 6,800 for a guy who's throwing for 300 regularly with 2 touchdowns regularly. It's not just a floor play anymore. Once again, books have Purdy at I think I hit the over at 249.5 this afternoon. It's jumped up a little bit, but I mean, we've been spamming Purdy every single week. I think the field will be in on him, maybe not to the extent of Matthew Stafford, we'll talk about here in a minute, but I mean, you can always make the case for Purdy.
Yeah, Stafford's going to be mega chalk. Yep. Purdy will probably be right there with Josh Allen as the second most owned quarterback of the slate. I mean, he's been playing fantastic. The 49ers offense looks unstoppable. The matchup is really, really strong. I think the one hole you could poke is that the matchup is legitimately perfect for Christian McCaffrey, and there's a chance he could just score every single touchdown in this game.
Yeah. Well, he did that the last time they played. He scored 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, 51.7 DraftKings points for McCaffrey the last time these teams played. Purdy's pass catchers have been priced up, so that's sort of another, potential knock there. The stack is, a couple thousand more expensive than in previous weeks where we were really on him. I think in tournaments, he's a guy that I'm not super excited about playing, but I totally understand it. He's a strong projected value. 49ers could score 50 points this week. I get it.
Yeah, Debo's up to 7,700 now. To your point, we're getting a little bit of a discount relative to that with Ayuk, but he's up to 7,200 too. I think Kittle honestly might be my favorite with Purdy this week. Just 5,800 price. He always has 2 touchdown appeal, but you're right, man. McCaffrey's 9,300, Scott. He should be 10K easy. I mean, I don't know what DraftKings is doing with this price, but this week, what do you think? It'll be Zeke 45, 50%, like Darren was projecting, Kyron 38, and then, McCaffrey probably pushing well into 25, 30, right?
Yeah, maybe Kyron and CMC both 33.
Yeah. He's such a good play, man. Best play of the slate. I mean, I know I've kind of said it tongue in cheek with Derrick Henry. Christian McCaffrey is the best play of the slate. But given price, there's a lot of good running back plays this week. You can make a case for a lot of good plays, but McCaffrey is, his projected ceiling is insane. I
would imagine
go ahead.
People aren't just a final note on these 49ers pass catchers. I don't think people are going to be super eager to play Debo at 7,700, which, understandable. He has been significantly priced up. This is the nuts schematic matchup for him per our coverage tools. And he has the same red zone usage as Christian McCaffrey over the last 3 games. So you can still make a strong upside case for Debo. And I think now that I've thought it through a little more, I think that might make Purdy a little more tempting to me. If we get Debo around 8%, the Purdy stacks do look a little bit better. Debo, Kittle, Purdy, it's pretty nice.
Yeah, dude, you can always talk me into Debo.
Yeah.
Cardinal side is really easy too. I mean, if you're stacking Purdy, I'm just bringing it back with Trey McBride. I mean, dude is awesome. He's third only behind Kelsey and Kittle in yards per route run. He's just 5,200. Like, this is a tough matchup, but I really don't care. The volume has just been insane with McBride, and he's awesome. I really don't have much else on Cardinals side. I curious for your thoughts on Kyler, though, Scott. He's been one guy I've been struggling with all week.
Yeah, I just don't think he's a great play. Shout out to Rummy. Rummy texted me earlier today about a Kyler Murray plus McBride plus McCaffrey, I think it was, stack. And I was like, yeah, I think I'd keep that mini stack, but I just look for a different quarterback, just not too excited for it. But I get that, he's going to have to keep his foot on the gas the whole game. McBride, obviously, like, insane value, easy cash tight end. If you look at his numbers since Zach Ertz went down, he's 8th among all wide receivers in targets per game, 7th in target share, but he's priced as the wide receiver 23. So he's just like an insane value. It is a absolute brutal matchup, and he is projecting to be 33% owned. So that's your argument for tournaments. If you want to look somewhere else, maybe Michael Wilson's leverage. He's 300 off of minimum priced. He's missed a bunch of games due to injury, but he's probably healthier than Hollywood Brown. It's a top 12 matchup easily. It's a near perfect schematic matchup, which has been really important for him. Volume was good in recent games before the injury. Although this is just his second game with Kyler Murray. I just wanted to circle back in the 49ers, though. Purdy's probably my favorite GPP quarterback of the week. Just love this guy. I've lost so many followers comparing him to Patrick Mahomes, and I've enjoyed every second of it. He's just been like one of the number one cheat codes in DFS. He was mispriced in week 1. He's mispriced now. I've been saying that it's like basically the hardest part about Purdy is like it's impossible to pick a stacking partner. I haven't been much help, certainly not much better than a coin flip, but I do feel convicted on Debo, who's just been on fire lately. He gets the absolute best possible schematic matchup, which is something that's really important to him. You can check my Twitter. I had a tweet a few days ago on that. So that's my lean there. I think people are going to say, like, I want a ton of CMC on lineups without a 49ers pass catcher. I want a ton of Kyler on my lineups without Stafford or Puka or Kupp. But I think in both cases you can stack pretty easily. Like, I'd feel fine playing Purdy plus McCaffrey plus a receiver. I don't know. I'm struggling with how I want to play that in GPPs. I just kind of love all these guys, and unfortunately there's salary limitations to this game.
Yeah, that's a slight problem, especially like Jake was outlining. I mean, we were getting Debo and Ayuk at like 5,500, not even that long ago, like 8 weeks ago. It's rightfully come way up. I think that'll do it for this game, though. Scott, you mentioned Michael Wilson. Marquise Brown hasn't been healthy. His connection with Kyler's been bad too. Just 64% of Hollywood's targets have been catchable. It's really, really poor. Yeah, and you're not playing James Conner in this spot. All right, let's keep it moving. Commanders and Rams. I can't believe my eyes, guys. I had to do a double take. I see a total with 50 points, not just 50 and a half. Unbelievable. Rams Commanders hot game. 60. Rams are getting 6.5. This line has stayed all week. We've been talking about him whole show. Kyron Williams is just the absolute nuts. I want to get it started real quick because I think everybody's on Stafford, everybody's on Kyron. Let's get it started on Washington side. I think they're way trickier to figure out this week. Brian Robinson is not practicing. He's out. The hamstring injury. It'll be Antonio Gibson, and then Chris Rodriguez will probably steal some early down stuff. Sam House, Jake, I'll go to you. It's just 6,300. I'm seeing very contrarian, or not very contrarian, but he's going to come in, to your point, under Stafford, under Allen, under Purdy, maybe under Love. I don't get it. I think Sam Howell's a really strong play. I think Stafford's the best quarterback play on the slate at 6K. He's like cash game mush, but getting it started talking through tournaments here, I think Sam Howell makes a ton of sense. I mean, Washington's volume's insane. Howell leads all quarterbacks in attempts per game. it's just hard to stack him, obviously, but I do think he's a strong player.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to get people away from Howell is that it's so difficult to stack him. And I mean, yeah, it was, I spent a lot of time thinking about it this week, and I had a really tough time. Logan Thomas has a pretty strong schedule adjusted matchup. Curtis Samuel, seeing the best volume overall. Terry McLaurin's the best player on the team in terms of pass catchers, but yeah, I'm really not sure what direction I go. I think, it probably makes the most sense from an MME perspective. Then you can just roll out 15 or 20 Howell lineups with all the combos you want. But I'm curious if Scott has a strong take on any of these pass catchers, because it's so tough to figure out when everyone's target share is 16%.
I will say I have a strong take if ownership holds and McLaurin's like 18% and Samuel's 7%. Like, I prefer Samuel straight up. And especially in this spot, Rams are giving up the 6th most yards per game to slot receivers. You can obviously question Samuel's ceiling, but like floor has been really, really good in games where he's healthy. Like, if you just look at the games where he's running a route like on 55%, 60% of the team's dropbacks, he was dealing with the toe injury, limited him midseason. I mean, he's outproduced Terry McLaurin. I mean, not by much, like by 1.5 per game, but he's outproduced him. Scott, what do you think?
He's been the wide receiver 1 in games fully healthy by a decent margin. Thomas also well above Dotson. This is, like you said, and I don't know that this is a coincidence. Sam Howell, remember in college, like all he did was target Josh Downs. All he did was look to the slot. Yeah. And so this is great because the Rams are like the premier slot / tight end funnel defense. I do prefer Samuel, but I also like Logan. I know he hasn't done much all year. He's a top XFP value. He's been a top XFP value every week, but again, great funnel matchup. So those would be my 2 bring backs. I probably wouldn't think about anyone else. And honestly, you could be fine just going full Rams and not even worrying about a bring back. But I do like Samuel. On the Rams side, I think this is potentially a game where the Rams drop 55 points. I could see this not being at all competitive. Obviously, everyone wants to point to the Commanders' pass defense easily being the worst in the league, and that's undoubtedly true. I will say the defense does look pretty different since Ron Rivera's taken over. They're playing way more zone coverage. But their running game has been honestly even worse than their passing game since they traded their only 2 good defenders. Washington is giving up a league high 8.8 schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to running backs. This is Kyren Williams in the Todd Gurley role. And what's most notable about that Todd Gurley role is he leads all players in red zone XFP per game, which is just so valuable, so important. And this looks like a game where they're going to be inside the red zone very often. So easily one of the best plays of the slate. Obviously the field's all over it. And like, there's no real leverage because you're going to see a ton of Kyren lineups and then a ton of Stafford or Puka or Kupp on non-Kyren lineups.
For sure.
You can play them together. I mean, that was one of the, I think that's a semi-contrarian way to tackle it is just, double stack Stafford and throw Kyren in there. And the Rams score 55 and,
Stafford,
that won't be, unowned, but it'll save you a little bit on
Stafford and Kyren are like positively correlated. I mean, massively positively correlated. And Stafford is just absolutely dicing. I mean, Rams are a playoff team right now, and they could win playoff games right now with Stafford's play. I mean, he basically was the only quarterback to crack the Ravens all year, 294, just dime after dime. I mean, he's 6K. He's 7,200 on FanDuel. I think on FanDuel, he's going to push like 25, 30%, in which case, that's your argument against him over there. He's just 7,200, man. I mean, it's just an absolutely absurd price for him. I looked into this. So to your point, Scott, they fired Jack Del Rio, who is stupidly playing so much man coverage. He played man like over 40% of the snaps in his last 2 games. Just so stupid. They switched to 96% zone against Miami in week 12. And you can just point to, okay, it's Miami. You're just going to roll your safeties back, play zone. I think this is definitely a change. And I looked into it. So like By target share, by air yards, Nakua is like slightly ahead of Kupp. It's not by any meaningful margin. The only margin I found that was meaningful is Nakua is getting 22% of the design targets compared to Kupp at just 7%. And obviously everything the Rams do is out of this like super condensed formation. They put, use a ton of motion. They're, trying to get Kupp and stack formations. But I do think it's really interesting that Nakua is taking all of those design looks. And if you're making, one lineup and you're trying to decide between Kupp and Nakua, I definitely lean Nakua this week. Demarcus Robinson is in play. Scott, did you mention him earlier? I think you might have. He's in play for sure. This matchup is just so good, and he's been like legitimately involved. I don't think he's good, but I definitely think Matthew Stafford's good. He's just 3,600. I'd imagine he's going to be kind of popular as a salary saver, but he's definitely in play.
Yeah, so I've got a few things. One, I want to say Rams defense is far and away my favorite defense of the slate, best value. I also think that's a way where maybe this game doesn't smash. Like, I wanted to go onslaught Miami, and that pick six really changed everything. Puka versus Kupp, I think, is a legitimate argument. I do lean Puka. He's just been so much better since week 7. Nakua ranks 6th best in yards per route run. Kupp ranks 49th. Like you said, the design targets are there. He has the better schematic matchup. He has the better on paper matchup. The issue is like Kupp, I think, has been hurt for a really long time. Nakua suffered a bad injury. And then last week we saw like a sort of flip where Kupp went back to that designed target role, like that featured role. Maybe it was just a blip on the radar, or maybe, now Kupp's the healthier one, and, he looked good. So I do think this is tricky, but my lean is Nakua, who's cheaper and has that better matchup. When I say the better matchup, it's just, Washington's really terrible everywhere. But if you look at perimeter wide receiver ones against them, it's legitimately insane. Just everyone is going for 100 yards and a score. And then like when you talk about top 15 wide receivers, they're going for like 175 and 2 scores. And then Demarcus Robinson, Tutu's definitely out, right? Or is he still questionable?
Let me double check that.
So Demarcus Robinson was kind of like on the cusp of supplanting Atwell as the wide receiver 3. It was still like a committee, but he was having the better end of that. And then Atwell suffered that concussion. He gets thrust into a full-time role. And like, apparently that role is awesome. He saw 180 air yards, 50% of the team's air yards. So he has that downfield role, which is significant considering Washington has been the worst defense against the deep ball. You saw 10 targets, 3 end zone targets, top 6 in XFP. Production wasn't really there because maybe he stinks, but like that's just insane volume. 3,600 nuts matchup. I think he's an awesome play, cash play probably. He's great.
Yeah, Tutu is probably not going to play. Got back to a full practice today, but he's got a clear protocol tomorrow. And even if he does, McVay is the type of coach, like if you're not there for Thursday, Friday installs, you're probably not playing. Or I shouldn't say he could suit up, but just not have a role. I was going to make a note. You asked last week's usage with Kupp was interesting. I also think it's interesting that Puka Nacua is probably the best run blocking receiver in the game, and they ran it like 30 times last week, and he is like just an absolute missile in the run game. So it makes me wonder, like, if McVay's like, okay, we got to give Nacua a break. Let's scheme up some more throws to Kupp. This week. I don't know if it really matters. I think they're both going to get 8 to 9 targets, and they both could absolutely smash. I mean, I really don't know. I do slightly prefer Puka, like you, Scott, though.
In tournaments, I lean Kupp. He did look like himself last week. I think, the first read target share certainly suggested that he's,
Fair enough.
The alpha again in this offense. And like industry wide, they project identically, and Nacua is 500 cheaper. So Optos will push you towards Nacua. I wouldn't be surprised if the ownership gap was a little wider than what's currently projected. But they're both fantastic plays.
I'm so mad at myself for last week because I loved Lamar. I absolutely loved Lamar stacks, and I didn't bring anything back with Kupp. Just, oh my God. I loved Kyron. Obviously he was, got the volume, but just didn't have the ceiling. This is such a sick game. Such a sick game. All the things from it. Cowboys, Bills, all the things from this game too. Bills are getting 2. Total is 50 and a half, depending on where you look. I think it's 50 now. Cowboys are clean relatively in terms of injuries. On the Bills side, they're going to lose 2 more starters, man. Defensive end, AJ Epineza is out. Micah Hyde, their safety, is out as well. Just such a good spot for Dak and CD. It's been a good spot for Dak and CD every single week, regardless of matchup, especially outside of that one game against the Panthers. This duo is just has just smashed. Scott, what do you think about Dak, CD, and Cowboys before we talk Josh Allen and expected massive chalk with him this week?
Yeah, this is where I worry about overthinking things. It's just like Dak and CD have been easily the 2 most valuable players in fantasy over the last 8 weeks. CD Lamb has not had a down game once over that span, just insane production, insane volume. But if you guys read Nick's article breaking down the coverage shells, I did find it persuasive that this is like, well, Dallas has extreme home road splits. And then this is like a pretty unideal coverage shell matchup for Dak and for CD. I can argue that both ways. Buffalo's struggled against slot wide receivers in recent weeks. They're also designed to funnel production to the short and intermediate levels of the field. I think what ultimately matters most is they've just been an unstoppable juggernaut in this game environment's offense. But I did want to just kind of like poke some holes there. I don't know if there's going to be any actual takeaway or any impact on my ownership or play, but I did want to mention that.
In terms of projection, I think Lamb is by far and away the best receiver play on the slate. Not considering ownership, I mean, he should project like 3.5 better than every receiver on the slate.
He's been really just a guy against too high coverage this year.
Yeah, I know that is
maybe that's just like overthinking things, but it did stick out to me.
Yeah.
I don't think it is. I mean, too high limits big plays, and Dallas has thrived off of big plays the last 6-7 weeks.
I know, man, but it feels like we're like thinking into a pretzel here. Like this game's got a 50.5 total. It's Josh freaking Allen against Dak Prescott. Like, CD has such a sick ceiling here. And in terms of median projection, like he should at least be 3.5 points higher than every receiver on the slate. And that includes Tyreek. He's dealing with the ankle injury and a, brutal matchup. I'm not going to overthink it and play Dak and CD again. Obviously we're not getting the, super cheap salary on Dak anymore. Womp womp, but he's just been absolutely going off. Bills are, I think, really simple this week. I mean, Allen Jake is going to be really chalky, but for all the right reasons. I mean, he's just got such a strong ceiling. And he's at least on DK. I think on FanDuel it's a little bit more of a conversation. He's up at 9K, but it's so flat on DK. I mean, he's such a good play.
Yeah, fantastic play in this spot. I mean, his history in high total games has been fantastic. Over 30 DraftKings points per game over the last 3 seasons in games with a total over 50. The way Dallas plays defense does help out, man heavy, sort of like what we talked about with Fields. It helps rushing quarterbacks a bit. What's interesting is that, when I was first thinking about this game, I was thinking like, oh, well, maybe it'd be contrarian to play, Allen with CD Lamb, which I'm sure it is. Ownership doesn't necessarily suggest that. Diggs isn't pulling any ownership though, which is a bit shocking to me. And, it's easy to see him go off against a man heavy defense that plays, pretty close to, I believe the league high rate or right behind the Browns in single high. He's going to get a lot of one-on-one coverage and, their season's on the line. Why wouldn't they feed him?
Yeah, I will say, Diggs has been a man beater. That sounds horrible. He's been their man beater, I should say, for years. In terms of efficiency, it's just not been there this season. I think he's at like 1.8 yards per route run. He was a 3.0 against, 3.0 yards per route run against man basically his entire career. I mean, he's been so good. That is a concern. He also has had 3 of the worst possible matchups in 3 of his last 4 games. He, was solid against the Eagles, but he got shut down against Pat Surtain. The Jets limited him to 27 yards. He got shut down last week against the Chiefs. Honestly, he kind of shut himself down last week. He had 2 really bad drops. But I'm with you. I think if Diggs is going to be like 6-7%, he's a really, really strong tournament play. I mean, CeeDee Lamb's like the best receiver play on the slate. But you could make a case like, if you just take away the last 3 games, 3 of the last 4 games against really tough defenses, you can make a case Stephon Diggs is like easily the wide receiver 2 on this slate. If you think Stephon Diggs is back. If you're not playing Diggs, Scott, who are you stacking with Josh Allen? Or are you not stacking with Josh Allen?
Yeah, I think it's insanely difficult. Like everything's pointing to this not being a Gabe Davis game. He struggles against man and all that other stuff. He also stinks probably. Kincaid, you got to knock a little bit with Dawson Knox being back. It makes Khalil Shakir unplayable.
Yeah.
It does benefit Diggs significantly, but it's also, and I know the matchups were tough, but he scored under 8 fantasy points in 3 of his last 4. We know Joe Brady doesn't know how to scheme guys open, or at least that's the word in NFL circles.
He's been doing a hell of a job at scheming James Cook open. That's for damn sure.
Right. And then not playing him in the second half of last week's game. But yeah, I mean, Josh Allen could get there on his own with his legs, and, it's a man heavy defense. So like that might be what happens. I think, I'm going to have a lot of Allen, and I'm going to have Diggs and probably no one else on that side. Again, I think Purdy, the more I think about it, I think Purdy's my favorite GPP quarterback of the week, and the price doesn't hurt. But yeah, obviously this game could just be so awesome.
Yeah, if this game were in Dallas, I think the total would be like 54.5, 55. I mean, not that it changes much, but like, this is one of the best games we've had all year, really.
Yeah.
With ease, we've got 3 really good games in the afternoon window. 3 games in the afternoon window. So yeah, I mean, to me, Allen's going to push. It'll be Stafford and then Allen, right, Jake, in terms of ownership?
Yes, it's pretty big teardrop between Stafford and Allen. I mean, Stafford's by far the best quarterback play of the slate.
Yeah, then in which case 6,800 Purdy. You're probably on the right track there, Scott.
Well, I mean, the thing with Allen is, the projected ownership obviously isn't great, but the secondary pieces in this game are not going to carry much ownership, especially with everyone wanting to play, the Rams Commanders game. So, mixing in a guy like Jake Ferguson, even Brandon Cooks, really moves down your combinatorial ownership, and you're not sacrificing a ton in terms of projection.
Yeah. I think Ferguson's really interesting. Bills play a lot of too high. That's been a big signal for Ferguson this season. He has a 19% target share, 2.0 yards per route run against too high. Dips to just 12% target share with 1.1 yards per route run against 1 high looks. He's also got 8 targets in back-to-back games. Ferguson's, I think, a really, really strong tight end play, and he's not going to be owned.
His red zone usage is outstanding. I believe he leads all tight ends in end zone targets.
Yeah, and they got not Luke Shoemaker, but Peyton Hendershot back, and it didn't even matter. Ferguson's route didn't even move. So I think he's just earned the starting job. And in terms of projection, I mean, it's Kelsey McBride Kittle, obviously. And then I think it's easily Ferguson. And then I think right behind it, it's probably Njoku. I think Ferguson's a really, really strong play. I think that'll do it. You guys.
No.
We should probably talk Tony Pollard. Yeah, we should probably talk Pollard. Sorry.
And Cook.
Well, we kind of talked Cook. Why didn't they play him in the second half? Do you have a note on that, Scott?
No, I don't remember. I just know that this like new Joe Brady usage is good, particularly because he's being used more near the end zone. He also looks amazing, super efficient on a per touch basis. He's a good play. Pollard, I like as well. Like I said about Buffalo shutting down the deep ball, really like Jake Ferguson. Agree with you, Graham. Don't like Cooks. This should help Pollard in the passing game. They're giving up the second most check downs, a lot of running back targets. He's seeing really good raw volume. He's ranked top 5 in XFP in back-to-back games. 16 carries, 8 targets last week. But I will say it was weird to me. In the first half of last week's game, Rico Dowdle out carried him. Thought that was a little odd. So I did write up Rico Dowdle stacked with Cowboys defense as like my thinnest, most galaxy brain play of the week. But yeah, I think both, you just look at the over under and it's like, yeah, obviously we have to be excited about these running backs in this game.
Yeah, I'm going to use my one Johnny and just say no to Rico.
Yeah, that's
yeah. All right, appreciate
it. Yeah, I mean, look, Pollard on FanDuel, I think it'll be Zeke 6,500. I think Gibson's going to get played quite a bit as the cheapies, and then Pollard at 7K is just he's going to be massive chalk over on FanDuel. Tony Pollard chalk week at 7K on FanDuel has burnt a lot of people all year. You can certainly get away from it, but he does project really well. And I will say, he is not as explosive as he once was, but he has looked a lot better the last couple of weeks. He's not going to rip off the 70 yarders like he could in the past, but Juice has definitely been a little bit better. Yeah, and James Cook, man, I mean, we were on this last week. I loved him in tournaments. He only needed 30 snaps to score 25 DK points, but by snap rate in this new Joe Brady offense, I mean, he hasn't gone above 45%. It's just when he's on the field, he's getting the ball. It's just so bizarre that they just don't unleash him. If this is a game where James Cook plays, if they do the sharp thing and play him like 75% of the snaps and like Rashad White or one of those types of roles, like he's gonna smash at 6,300. Just got a lot of respect for Dallas's defense, obviously, but there's definitely upside with Cook if the Bills do finally do the sharp thing and let him loose, because Scott, I mean, he's awesome, man. I thought in terms of fantasy, like his upside is Austin Eckler, but like, I mean, if they do unleash him, like he has legitimate RB1 upside. I think that'll do it. Great show. You guys want to build a lineup real quick? Should we do it? Shall we? Let's do it. Alrighty. Jake, I'll let you get us started, man. Where do you want to get started here?
I appreciate you going to me first. I think we lost Scott. Either that or he's the world's stillest man right now.
Uh-oh. He's turned into concrete, man.
I kind of want to go with Fields. But right. I know that he wasn't exactly our favorite guy. Do you have a lean at quarterback?
I'm more with Scott with Purdy.
Okay.
But, to your point, it's so hard to stack him. So let's do a Fields team, because honestly, I have not messed with a Fields team. So let's do that. And we're obviously playing more. Do you have to bring it back? Do we want to bring it back? Cooper's just 6K. We talked through Jerome Ford, but you made a good point on Kareem Hunt here.
Yeah, I'd want to bring it back. I mean, there's a lot of solid values on the Brown side. I see we have a new Scott Barrett. Oh, Scott Barrett is back. We had a temp Scott Barrett for a few minutes.
Wow.
Hey.
Yeah. That was something.
Yeah. Welcome back, man. You were a concrete man for about solid 45 seconds.
Damn.
Yeah.
All right, we're working on a Fields DJ Moore stack. Talking through Brown's springbacks here.
Overall, I like Cooper the most. Yeah, I guess it just depends where we want to go from here. Because if we want to save on salary a bit, Elijah Moore's more than fine.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's either Amari or Njoku.
Yeah, if we want to save salary, I'm good with Njoku, honestly.
All right.
Let's do that. Let's try that first. Running back, we got to figure that out real quick. I mean, it's
Zeke. Got to go with Zeke on this lineup.
It's so easy to play Zeke.
I know.
I hate it.
Less. Yeah, 43%. Holy hell. All right, Zeke. We don't have to worry too much about ownership, because I don't think DJ Moore and Fields is going to be super popular in large field stuff. Where to next? Did I put Njoku in there? Scott loved Rams D. Let's do that with Kyron for this team.
Like it.
We don't have to play. You don't. If you're just playing Kyron, you do not have to bring back with a commander. Whoops. Not Karen.
we're going to need to save a little bit of salary.
Oops.
With one of these wide receivers. I mean, I would imagine we're all in agreement on Demarcus Robinson being the best value wide receiver overall. But I mean, there's a handful of good options.
Yeah. Him, Demaria's fine.
Well, and Scott loves Wandale, right, Scott?
I can't play Patriots. Oh my God, dude. If Wandale's 25%, what are we doing?
I feel like there's no way. That's gotta be high. I don't believe it.
Must be all parlay picker.
The greatest DFS player of all time.
Right.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, Darren has Wandale at 36% right now. That's wild to me. All right, we got Njoku in there. Tight end. You know, I'm gonna optimize, see what the optimizer spits out here. Fields with Moore, Derrick Henry, nice with Zeke. Those running backs are so sick. This is sharp team.
Yeah, I like that team.
I'm not too thrilled with Jalen Hyatt, but hey. All right, I'm going to screenshot this and throw it into a $1 tournament. Guys, great stream. Everybody out there, hope you guys crush tournaments this week. It's kind of a gross week, especially that 1 p.m. slate. It's going to be some pretty ugly football, but we're going to get some great games in the afternoon window. If you guys don't take down tournaments, I hope one of our subscribers does. For Scott, for Jake, for Tom Tipple, I'm Graham. Catch you guys next week.